Hello, welcome to the webinar. I am Rodolfo, I'm the CTO of Libraesva. This is a technical webinar about the DMARC service, that's DMARC service. I will make an introduction to the DMARC protocol and standard and terms and how it works, so the basics about DMARC. And then Marco, who is the manager of the product, will explain in details how the product works, the features, and we will see the service in action. So let me start. So this is going to be an introduction about DMARC, what it is and how it works. Basically, it is a protocol, it's a standard to protect from spoofing. To be more precise, it protects about spoofing on the header from. So you probably know that every email has two senders. There is an envelope from that is used for the actual delivery via SMTP of the mail. And then there is an header from, which is one of the many headers of the email. And it's the one that is shown by the email client to the user. So we already have some standards to protect from spoofing. In particular, we have SPF that protects the envelope from spoofing, but the envelope from is not what is shown to the user. So the main aim of DMARC is to protect the header from, which is what the user sees from spoofing. And it does it by enforcing the alignment between what is written in the header from and the SPF and the DKIM validation. So we will see now how it works in the detail. But the main target is this: make sure that what the user sees in the from field is reliable. How does it work? So when an email is delivered, the recipient of the email, the recipient service, performs SPF and DKIM validation. So as I said before, SPF makes sure that the envelope from is reliable, while DKIM is a protocol that digitally signs the content of the emails, including the headers. And every signature added has a domain attached to. So the domain owns some signatures and signs these emails with a private key, and the recipient can verify the signatures with the public key that is published on the DNS. So the information that is signed is reliable. The DMARC verifies the so-called alignment. Alignment is an important term in DMARC. It verifies basically that the domain in the header from is aligned either with the SPF domain or with the domain of the DKIM signature. If there is an SPF validation on the same domain of the header from, it's a pass. If there is a valid DKIM signature on the same domain of the header from, is a pass, either one or the other or both. So this makes sure that the information in the header from is valid. If there is no alignment, there is no pass for the DMARC, and then it is applied, it is enforced a policy, which is specified by the sending domain. So the recipient is supposed to apply the policy that the sending domain chose to publish for the emails that fail the alignment. So these emails are supposed to be either rejected or quarantined. We will see some details in a few seconds. So here we have a few examples of DMARC validations. The first example is a full alignment. The email has example.net in the header from. There is a valid DKIM signature added by the example.net domain, same domain as the header from, so it's aligned. And there is also an SPF validation on the envelope from. So in this case, we have an envelope from on the same domain as the header from, and SPF validation is okay. So we have a full alignment. The header from is aligned with both DKIM and SPF. In the second example, we have same from domain example.net, a valid DKIM signature on the same domain, and an envelope from on a different domain. This is a classic example of a newsletter where the envelope from is different from the header from, but there is a valid DKIM signature on the same domain of the header from. So there is DMARC alignment, the email passes validation, it's okay. Third example, SPF only. So we have, again, example.net in the header from. We have a DKIM signature, but on a different domain, so it's not aligned. We have SPF validation on the same domain, so it's aligned. So this is also a valid email for DMARC. Last example, we have a fail. So we have, in this case, a DKIM signature on a different domain than the header from, and also an SPF validation on a different domain than the header from. So no matter what the DKIM and SPF validation say, it's a different domain, so there is no alignment. In this case, there is a failure, and the published policy is supposed to be applied by the recipient. More technical example, here we have the same information in the headers of the email. So you can see now we have an SPF pass at the first line on the domain example.net, which is the same domain as the header from. So we have an alignment with the valid SPF validation. And there is also the DKIM signature on the same domain. So there is a full alignment here in this example. So this email passes DKIM validation. Similar example, but with different domains. So the header from is, as before, example.net, but we have both SPF and DKIM on a different domain. In this case, it's example.com. So it's a different domain than example.net. So there is no alignment. So no DMARC validation in this case. These are the checks that are performed automatically by the receiving system. So if I want to implement DMARC on my domain for the emails that I send, what am I supposed to do? All I need to do is to publish a TXT record on my domain. So I published a TXT record that contains the policy, which is the P parameter in this case. In this case, it's a known policy. It's one of the 3 policies that I can publish. We will see the other ones later. In this case, known means that the recipient does not enforce anything if there is a failure of the alignment. It's a policy that is usually used for testing before enforcing DMARC. When I start using DMARC, I usually publish a known policy. So nothing changes on the recipient side. But with the second parameter, the RUA, I can specify an email address where I will receive aggregate reports. This is a very, very important feature of DMARC. It gives me a visibility about the email traffic that no other tool provides, because it's the recipients of the emails that are sent from my domain or that pretend to be sent from my domain that send me reports about where these emails are sent from and their validation. So this is a very important tool. In this case, I'm publishing an email address where I'm going to receive these reports. It's usually 1 report per day, which aggregates all the emails that have been received by that domain within the last 24 hours. So this is how I publish the DMARC policy. The available policies are known, as I said, it's used to monitor the traffic, so the recipient doesn't change the behavior. If I don't publish a policy or I publish a non-policy, it's the same. no change of behavior on the receiving side, but I'm starting to get visibility. Then I can move to a different policy. Quarantine asks the recipients to put the emails that fail alignment into a quarantine, which means in the spam folder or any other quarantine. It's a general concept. So I'm asking the recipients to block, not deliver the emails to the user if they fail alignment. The last option is the reject policy. I'm asking to the recipient to reject the emails that fail alignment. So they are supposed to send back the emails, to reject at the SMTP level, not to accept those emails. What's important to note here is that this is the policy that I'm publishing. So it's my desiderata. It's what I wish the recipients do, but they can choose themselves what to do. Many recipients do not implement the reject policy. They prefer to quarantine even if the policy is reject. It's not mandatory to follow the instructions published in the DMARC record. There are many good reasons not to reject emails. First of all, the recipients will have the email in the quarantine. In case of a false positive, they can still retrieve the email. If it's an actual attack, a spoofing attack, they have this email sample that they can analyze. So there are many good reasons to use a quarantine policy, even if the sender specifies a reject policy. So what's important to note is that I cannot be 100% sure that the policy that I publish will be actually applied by the recipient. But this is what I can tell to the world that I want them to do. This is one report. This is one of the daily reports that I receive when I publish an email address to receive the reports. So this is a daily report. It's aggregate. So every domain will send me one report per day. In this case, the sending domain is the google.com. I will receive a single email with a single report for every day for all the emails that I've sent to that domain within the last 24 hours. So no matter whether I sent one email or 1 million emails, I will receive one report. Of course, the report will be bigger if I sent many emails, or it will be small if I sent a few emails. But it's an aggregate report. It contains all the sources, the sent emails, so all the IP addresses that sent at least one email to google.com, and all the validations performed on these emails. So how many emails failed completely validation, how many emails had a DKIM invalid and SPF not valid, and so on. They are classified, aggregated, and have the numbers. These reports can become very big. They can be many reports per day. It's actually not practical to manage these reports manually. They need to be processed automatically, aggregated, and information must be presented in a useful way. And also there is some interpretation needed. As you can see in this example, in the fourth line from the bottom, there is a comment field. That's not formalized field, but it contains often very useful information. Different senders send different types of information. So the systems that receive these reports can process this information, can use it, can just show it to the user. In our case, we mapped all the different comments, all the different combination between the types of information that are contained in the report, and the knowledge also. So the system, the LetsDMARC service, acts as an expert system and provides an explanation also for the different situations that are reported by the reporters. I will leave Marco going into the details of the service. Now Marco is going to take control and show you the actual LetsDMARC service. Feel free to make questions in the chat box, and we will answer all the questions at the end.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rodolfo. And let's see easy to onboard your domain in our platform. LetsDMARC is a software as a service, so it's not needed to install anything in your systems. You just have to create your account or request a trial to get access to your instance in our service. And the first step you have to do is to onboard your domain. It's an easy step, and you can follow the wizard of onboarding by clicking on register your first domain. Sorry. Okay, so restart. You can select register your first domain, and the domain onboarding wizard will start. You have just to get your domain in the text box, click next. And if already published DMARC record is discovered by the platform, it will be presented to the user, and the user can choose if he wants to import this record with this information in the platform. Otherwise, on selecting, you can create a new DMARC record from draft. By clicking save, the DMARC wizard will start, and you can follow all the steps by selecting the policy you want. As Rodolfo says, there are 3 types of policy that can be published. For an onboarding domain that needs to implement for the first time the DMARC solution, obviously is recommended to select none, to just get the reports by the receivers, and without impacting in any way the delivery of your emails. Then some information about some parameters about the alignment of DKIM and SPF. We suggest to use the relaxed one to get more easy to catch the alignment of DKIM and SPF. If you want, you can specify a subdomain policy. So the main policy for your second level domain, and then you can use another policy, a different policy for all the subdomains. If you don't set any subdomain policy, the main domain policy will be used. Percentage is a parameter that is useful when you need to enforce your policy. So if you want to pass from non-policy to quarantine policy or reject policy, you can do it more gradually by specifying a percentage that will be used by the receiver when he needs to apply your policy on messages that fails the DMARC checks, and the impact of this policy will be correspondent to the value you will insert in the percentage. In case of non-policy, this value is irrelevant. At the end of the wizard, you will have a summary of all the options you selected in the wizard. And then you can click show record to get the actual record you have to insert in your DNS as TXT record with all the options you selected. And very important, the RUA address, so the email address where the receiver daily will send you the XML file with RUA reports. This address obviously is hosted by LetsDMARC platform, and all the reports that will be sent will be parsed and published then in the interface. Let's have a look to some results that we have in our example domain. As you can see, the dashboard section gives you an overview of the last week results for all the domains you configured in the platform. You get the number of domain, the total volume of emails that are being reported by the receivers, and the failure rate. Then you have a map that can useful to see from where the failures comes, and a top DMARC failures list to see the domain that have more failures. Moreover, you can get the volume by domain and the compliant and not compliant volume of emails by day. So I can see for each day of the week how many emails are compliant or not. In the last part, I have the detail by domain. So I can see for each domain I configured the volume, the compliance rate, the SPF alignment and the DKIM alignment, and how many emails of this domain are forwarded. By clicking of each one of these domain, I can get more in details the DMARC reports. There are two ways to analyze the reports. One is by results and one is by sources. Let's start by the sources. Sources are intended the actual servers that sends emails with my domain in the either from, and I can see from where these emails are coming. As before, the volume for this domain with a resume of failures, compliant, and total volume, how many reports I received. The top 5 failure sources, so the most failures source and the most compliant source. And then in detail, for each domain that sends emails with my either from, I can see how many IP that they use, how many variation in the either from domain, how many emails, is compliance, is alignment by SPF, DKIM, and the forwarding. By clicking off one of them, for instance, Outlook.com, I'm sorry, I can see the distribution of all the volume of this email by region and the details of each actual server that sent these emails. So I have the actual IP address of the email server that sent that email. By clicking on one of them, I can get some information about his name, the either from, the geographical localization, and then all the reports where this server is noted. So in this case, I have a report from Google, which reports me one email which failed SPF alignment and DKIM alignment, so resulting in a not compliant DMARC message. In the detail, I get the last step of analysis where I have all the results of this situation, and then an interpretation of the situation. So these messages are sent from an IP address which is present in SPF record of a different domain from the one is in either from. So it's not aligned for SPF part. And he also not aligned for the DKIM part because there is a DKIM signature in the message, but is not from the domain that I am analyzing. Oh, I'm sorry. Is present in this case, but is not valid. So in this case, I have a signature, but because it's not valid, is not aligned for the DMARC checks. This is probably forwarded message, and the system give me some suggestions to fix this situation. So to check if I correctly published my selector on my domain, and if the system that are performing the signing of the message is working correctly. All these information are more technically reported below, and I can see the actual signature present in the message. So one signature from Microsoft which is valid but not aligned, and one that is aligned but not valid, so is not valid for the DMARC check. The other way to analyze the results are by looking all the reports and group the actually results that they have. So I can see the summary of rejects, quarantine, and pass messages, all the volume differentiated by the final result, and then a list with all the messages, all the results grouped by his results, so by the DKIM alignment, SPF alignment, the ARC result, and the disposition of the receiver. This is useful to get focused on a situation that needs to be checked and not be confused by a noise that can always be present from actual spoofing of your domain. That's because you cannot do anything to it. You can instead fix eventually any situation that can occur configuration, maybe a misconfiguration or of SPF record, maybe a source that you forgot to add to your SPF, or a source that are not signing correctly your messages. And that can be found by looking on the volume of messages that have the same result. So if I see many messages that fails DKIM signature, probably I have a legit source that are not signing correctly my messages. And then by clicking each one of these rows, I can get more details about this situation. So the sources, the selector used, and the reporter that reports me this situation. Then for each one of these sources, I can get the last event in details and get the last step that we see before with the situation, the results explained, and the suggestion to fix this situation. The next section is the domain section, where I can see all the domains that I am monitoring and I have hosted on my platform. Each one of them are regularly checked by an automatic procedure to notify eventually if there are issues on DMARC record, DKIM selectors, or SPF record. And this information are get by reports too. So if I get some reports where are noted some selector that I have not published in my DNS, the platform will inform me and show me which selector I missed. Also, if you have an issue, syntax issue on your records, or an exceed of lookups in SPF records, that checks are performed too. The DNS timeline gives you monitoring track feature of DKIM, SPF, and DMARC record of your domain. So all variation on these records for each domain hosted in the Libraesva LetsDMARC are monitored regularly and are noted in this section. Also, you can see this variation in all the charts we see before to get if there are some variation on delivery of your emails. So if I added a new include in my SPF and maybe I hit a lookup limit, I will see some variation on acceptance rate of my emails, and all is shows in the interface. The last section is about DNS Manager, which is a feature of LetsDMARC, and is very useful because you can delegate some records which are very specific for email systems. You can delegate these records to be managed by the platform and by yourself that use the platform without involve who is actually managing your DNS. So usually in big companies, the DNS management is something that is more difficult to get modified. So if I need to add a new source, a new selector on my SPF or my DKIM, I have to involve some other organization, some other person, and have everything inside one single platform is more easy to make variation, make adjustment. Also because you can see the reports and actually get the notice that a new source needs to be added to your SPF record, for example. So by delegating these records on the platform, you can get this feature. Also, for what concerns the SPF, you can get rid of the max lookups on SPF records. So you, as you can probably know, you can do 10 lookups at maximum on SPF. So 10 resolution of include terms or MX or A terms and so on. And then if you exceed these limits, you get some issues on SPF checks. Hosting SPF, your SPF in LetsDMARC prevent this situation. So you can add how many sources you want, and the system will show to who makes the query to your SPF record only if the IP address is asking for is authorized or no. So is also a security feature that LetsDMARC give to who use this system to prevent, to disclose all the authorized sources that sends emails from your domain. The sources actually will be masked by macro, and but it will continue to work as usual. And you can manage your information as usual from the platform. Obviously, is a multi-user platform. You can add how many users you want with different roles and visibilities. Also, you can create subtenants from your master tenant, and a subtenant basically is a virtual copy of your tenant that can be isolated by your master tenant to, for example, give to your customer access directly to the platform and visibility only on his domains and his user. So it's actually a tenant, a subtenant of your main tenant that will be used by your customer, isolated by other customers. In the profile parts, you can see the license situation. You can activate the branding mode to replace our logo with yours, activate the two-factor authentication, and get the audit log. That's all, I think.
So what's important to note is that there are some situations where some borderline situations, for example, forwarding messages that fail alignment, like we've seen, like the example that we've seen before. There was a message that was had a broken DKIM signature because some forwarders add some information to the message that break the signature. And there are some situations where the receiving system still recognizes the email as legit, even though it fails alignment. One example is, for example, Google Groups. If you send an email to Google Groups, your sender, it will be spoofed, but when Google receives the email, still understands that the email is legit, even if technically it's not. There are a lot of borderline situations due to the fact that all of these standards have been added one on top of the other for years and years, and always maintaining backward compatibility. So nothing is black and white in email. There are a lot of gray situations, and we try to put all of the expertise of Libraesva as a company that works only on email into this system, so that when you get to analyze a situation that it's not very clear, the system will provide you with a likely explanation of the situation, of what's going on, what you can do and what you can't do in order to fix it, whether the email is legit or not. So you will get a lot of details on the situation that are more than just an aggregation of raw data and making sums of numbers provided by the reports. There is also an expertise encoded into the system to help you understand what's going on and what you have to do in order to fix it. So basically, this is the service. The licensing is based on number of domains, email volumes, and feature set. There are some features that are licensed separately. You can refer to your sales contact to get all the details about the licensing. As you have seen, you can manage subtenants. The service has been designed also for MSPs to resell the service, so you can create subtenants and assign them to your customers and assign a portion of your license to them. So all of the reselling part is already there, and that's it. The system has been designed by Libraesva after years of managing these kinds of issues, providing consultancy about DMARC, which is a multi-step process where you begin by getting the reports, and then at a later time you enforce the policy and keep monitoring and making changes. And you often need to make changes to the SPF record, to the DKIM signatures that are published. So we designed the DNS delegation feature that is done very easily by delegating the subzone of the DNS. So you make the configuration on your main DNS once and never touch it again. All of the email related DNS configuration are moved here, so that who manages email is can can autonomously make changes to the DNS, but with a very precise and limited delegation only on the DNS records that are related to the email. That is a feature that is missing in the normal DNS management. You either get access to the whole DNS and you potentially can make a lot of damage or not. So with this feature, we designed a way to safely delegate all of the DNS management related to the email, the KIM, SPF, and DMARC. So this was an introduction, a brief technical introduction to the platform. Of course, we are available through the technical support to provide you additional details. You can test the system, so contact your sales contact to get a trial license. And that's it. If you have any question, ask them now, or we are about to close this webinar. I don't see any question. So I thank you all for participating to this webinar, and hope to meet you again in a future webinar. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Good afternoon.